All right, I'm just going to use a few images to go over the paradox of center of mass in physics when we consider that all of matter is made of light. Then the center of mass is no longer an accurate assumption that arises from the symmetric rest frame assumption from symmetric mathematics or commutative geometry. So this is a quote from Nobel physicist Gerard de Hooft in his paper with Martin van der Mark. And they're talking about the rest mass and the gravitational mass. And you have to have a closed system with the center of mass of all particles at rest. Now the problem is when you try to determine that light has a zero rest mass, you're assuming you can contain light inside a box when in fact the light is not at rest inside the box. And so therefore the light has a gravitational red or blue shift inside the box. And this is the image that shows this happening, where you have the light causing a pressure or weight inside the box as a force from momentum defined by frequency. And so that pushes the box up, and that causes a force, a blue shift of the light. So when we assume that the center of mass is fixed, then that it creates an inaccurate measurement of the light with the gravitational mass. So that's only in terms of assuming a what's called a relative observer is at rest as the observer. But that can't be true if all matter is actually made of light, including the observer. Then nothing is at rest. And this is their point, as they say that since the actual mass is from the frequency, then the smaller the particles are, the greater the binding energy as mass. The smaller the length scales, the stronger the forces involved and the higher the binding energies and hence the corresponding masses relative to the rest mass. And so we wonder whether this finds its climax where an elementary material particle is built of constituents that have zero rest mass, which is what light is supposed to have. So with only kinetic and potential energy to make up for its mass. This should be the case for the electron because it's the smallest particle. It's smaller than light, even the photon. But this is quite impossible. And what is intriguing is that all these elementary particles have non-zero spin. And so they have intrinsic angular momentum, which implies that they have some sort of intrinsic dynamics. Therefore, point particles and hard spheres as matter do not exist. So what is matter really made of then? The electron is quivering at light speed just like a photon in a box. Therefore, matter is light. And this is the article Light is Heavy by Martin van der Mark and Gerard Duved. That's the PDF link. Now, Martin van der Mark, he did a YouTube talk about this, or it was a lecture that got posted on YouTube. So he explains this with the law of phase harmony from Louis de Broglie, the Nobel physicist, who's actually the true founder of quantum physics. And so Martin van der Mark explains that the box is a resonator then, and then the wave of the light is the vibrating thing. And so the clock is the cavity, and then the light is the wave inside it. So their frequencies are inverse to each other. As one decreases, the other increases, and that's what the law of phase harmony is. And so it means that logically, Louis de Broglie realized there has to be a negative frequency and time reverse signal in order for this to occur at the same time, because as a particle goes towards the speed of light, the frequency increases, but the time also increases. And so for that to happen at the same time, then there has to be a negative frequency that's decreasing from the future, and that's what's guiding the light. And that's the secret gravitational mass of the light, is actually this. Instead of it having a zero rest mass, light has a secret negative frequency from the future that's guiding it with the time reversed signal, which is the frequency going down. Now, if you actually listen to his YouTube talk, then he goes into detail to explain that really well. So then we go into Günter Nimps, who did a superluminal sound signal of Mozart that he sent faster than the speed of light. Now, how did he do it? The center of mass, again, is the red here. So you have the red being, because of this quantum tunneling based on frequency, the center of the mass is superluminal. So once again, you have to realize that this is the same paradox of trying to trap light in a box, is that you have this superluminal phase shift of the center of the mass, because the center of the mass is assuming a symmetric rest frame. And so as John G. Williamson, who worked with Martin van der Mark, he did a commentary on Martin van der Mark's lecture, and he says, Louis de Broglie, his law of phase harmony is noncommutative. So there is no rest frame. There's no symmetric rest frame. So this is Günter Nimps explaining again that you have the amplitude of the signal here as a group wave with the magnitude, but the actual information of the signal is the average as the 1/2 of the width of the wave packet. And so once again, you have this superluminal signal based on a change in the phase of the frequency versus the time. And that's what makes it to be superluminal, and not the amplitude, because even though you change the amplitude, the width stays the same, the half width. So this signal doesn't depend on the magnitude from the amplitude. So that's the secret that Günter Nips is relying on in order to have this superluminal signal. It's also the same secret of a noncommutative phase. Now, so most classical physics assumes the signal is based on the amplitude, and therefore you cannot have a superluminal signal. And this is why you can have a superluminal signal, because you're just relying on the phase as the time being inverse to the frequency, just as Martin van der Mark explains that the law of phase harmony is based on the phase and the frequency and the time being inverse to each other. So then we get to Basil J. Hiley explaining that if it's actually non-commutative due to this time and frequency being non-commutative, then you don't have any wave decoherence anymore, because you're not relying on an actual probability wave from the Schrödinger wave equation. Instead, you're relying on time and frequency directly that's in a subquantum superluminal process of algebra. It's actually classical, but it's a non-commutative algebraic process. So it's not limited to the Planck scale of the H bar. So this H bar, normally it just reduces to zero, but he's saying that the non-commutativity is showing that the H bar can never reduce to zero, because you end up getting the quantum potential is based on the H bar being squared, or based on Planck's constant squared as the second derivative. And so since H bar is never zero, and this is also demonstrated again in the first equation here, right here, this H bar is in that equation of the Planck and Einstein being put together, what's called the de Broglie-Einstein relation. And so the H bar is never zero because of this non-squeezing theorem in non-commutativity. And so therefore you get this inherent non-commutativity to reality, and you never have to have a collapse of the wave function measurement problem in quantum physics. And if you can maintain that non-commutativity, then you can achieve this superluminal signal as anti-gravity, because space-time is created out of this, as well as mass of matter. And so what happens then is, when you convert to the classical, the kinetic energy as a anti-gravity force is disappeared, and it's conserved in the quantum as the quantum potential. But this non-commutative process is going on before the particle exists, as with the quantum potential in the particle, which is the real part of the Schrödinger wave equation in the quaternion complex part of the the Schrödinger wave equation. You can separate into a real and imaginary part, and so that quantum potential is hidden in the real part. And so then Basil J. Hiley was collaborating with Roger Penrose when they were both at Birkbeck College, along with David Bohm. And so in Roger Penrose's latest talk, he says that the mass and frequency are basically equivalent, and that at the end of the universe, the mass goes back to pure frequency as a quantum frequency, as a crossover. And so this is what Gerard de Hoof calls the eternal black hole, based on this frequency being non-commutative due to asymmetric time. And so Gerard de Hoof and Roger Penrose, they had a spat about a year ago in a live stream with Gerard de Hoof talking about his eternal black hole model of reality. So he's saying that all of matter has this micro black hole as a wormhole at the origin of matter, and due to the non-commutativity of the time and frequency, this based on the 1/2 spin, that prevents the collapse of the black hole as a singularity. And so you have this eternal black hole as a wormhole that's non-local. And it's all due to just realizing that the time and frequency is not based on this center of mass assumption in classical physics. And so that's going on all the time, and with no sense of size. It's the secret of non-locality. And it's also the secret of what happens at the end of the universe to create the Big Bang. Roger Penrose goes into this when he talks about the time being necessarily cubed. And when you have this cubed time as the phase, then it's a superluminal.